Okay, so you send off that invoice, and you're feeling pretty good about it. The project's done. The client's happy time to treat yourself to that fancy coffee, right?
Well, almost. There's this crucial bridge between sending an invoice and that celebratory latte actually getting paid.
You're right, it's not always smooth sailing in payment land. That's why we're diving into how to ask for payment politely. Because let's be honest, asking for money can feel a little awkward.
It definitely can be, but it doesn't have to be a source of stress. This article really nails it by emphasizing that a strategic approach to getting paid is about so much more than just collecting your due.
It's about the bigger picture.
Yeah.
Tell me more about this strategic approach.
Imagine this. You've delivered an amazing product, exceeded expectations, but then your payment process is clunky and awkward. It can really sour the experience for the client.
You're right. It's like ending a fantastic meal with a burnt dessert.
Exactly. A smooth, respectful payment process, on the other hand, reinforces that professionalism and even paves the way for future collaborations.
Because happy clients are more likely to become repeat clients.
Absolutely. And beyond client relationships, consistent cash flow is the lifeblood of any successful business.
Makes sense. You can't exactly launch that new product line if you're sweating about covering basic expenses because invoices are stuck in limbo.
Precisely. Think of timely payments as not just income, but as fuel for growth. This strategic approach they talk about is like building a reliable engine for your business.
I like that analogy. So we're not just talking about getting paid for a single project here. We're talking about building a system that ensures consistent income and fosters strong client relationships.
Exactly. And all of that contributes to your professional reputation. A business that handles payments efficiently and respectfully signals that they value their work and their clients' time.
It shows you're running a tight ship, which builds trust.
Exactly. It tells potential clients that you are someone they can rely on from start to finish, including that all-important payment process.
So how do we actually implement this strategic approach? Where do we even begin?
Well, this article kicks things off by tackling a question that often trips people up. When to make the ask?
Because timing is everything, right?
Yeah.
I bet there's a sweet spot not too pushy, but also not letting things drag on forever.
You're absolutely right. They emphasize sending that first gentle nudge the day after the payment is due.
Not a week later, not 2 weeks later, the day after. That seems early.
You'd be surprised how many freelancers make that mistake. But sending it the day after the due date is actually brilliant for a couple of reasons. First, it catches those accidental oversights. Maybe the invoice simply got buried in their inbox.
I know I've been guilty of that myself.
Right, we've all been there. This early nudge is like a friendly, just making sure you saw this. Second, it sets a precedent for prompt payment from the get-go.
I get it. Establish those expectations early on. So what happens if that initial super polite nudge doesn't do the trick? Do you just wait until the next month and hope for the best?
Definitely not. They recommend regular follow-ups, ideally every week or two, if needed. But the key here is consistency and maintaining a professional yet friendly tone throughout.
So it's not about bombarding them with angry emails every day.
Not at all. It's more like a polite tap on the shoulder, just reminding them that the payment is outstanding. Remember, you're not sending a demand letter. You're simply maintaining open communication.
Okay, I'm liking this approach so far. It's all about reframing it as a conversation rather than a confrontation. But what about those practicalities? How do we actually ask for payment in a way that's both effective and professional?
Well, they dive into different methods for requesting payment, and that's what we'll be exploring next.
I'm intrigued. Let's unpack those methods when we come back. Okay, so we've talked about the importance of timing and that consistent, friendly follow-up. But now let's dive into the actual methods of requesting payment. I imagine there's more to it than just firing off an email that says, "Pay up, please."
You'd be surprised, honestly. You'd be surprised how many people treat it that casually. But this article does a great job of breaking down those different methods and when to use each one.
Give me the rundown.
Well, they start with the good old email. It's still the workhorse for most payment requests, especially those initial invoices, early reminders, that sort of thing.
It makes sense. Emails are trackable. You can attach invoices directly.
Yeah.
It just feels official, you know?
Exactly. And it provides that valuable paper trail, which is, essential for any business transaction.
Yeah.
No, they go beyond just saying send an email. They actually give you a framework for crafting a really effective payment request email.
Okay, this is what I'm talking about. Lay that framework on me.
They start with the subject line, which you might think is a small detail, but it can make a world of difference.
First impressions and all that.
Exactly. They advise keeping it clear, concise, and friendly. Something like, friendly reminder, invoice for project name, or checking in, invoice number.
Straight to the point. No need for a novel in the subject line.
Precisely. Then, just like any professional communication, you want to start with a polite, personalized greeting. Addressing the client by name, referencing the project, it helps maintain that human connection.
So much better than a generic dear sir or madam. What about the actual body of the email? Any tips on making that clear and effective?
Absolutely. This is where you lay out all the essential details. The invoice number, the amount due, the project or service it's for, the original due date. And here's a tip that I found particularly insightful. They recommend making it ridiculously easy for the client to actually make the payment.
I like where this is going. Tell me more.
It's about minimizing friction points, so clearly outline the payment options you accept. Provide links to your preferred platforms, and if you use online invoicing software, make sure that's all linked up correctly. The easier you make it for them to pay, the more likely they are to do it promptly.
Streamlining the payment process. That makes perfect sense. And of course, always attach the actual invoice to the email for easy reference.
Always. They even provide a sample email template that incorporates all of these elements, which I thought was incredibly helpful. It strikes that perfect balance between being clear and professional, but also maintaining a friendly, approachable tone.
I am all for templates that take the guesswork out of it. Now, I know sometimes email isn't enough. What about those situations where you might need to pick up the phone? I imagine that can feel even more awkward than sending an email.
It can. Which is why they dedicate a whole section to phone call etiquette. They acknowledge that sometimes a more personal touch is needed, maybe emails have gone unanswered, or it's a larger invoice, and you feel a conversation is warranted.
Makes sense. It's all about gauging the situation and choosing the right method of communication.
Exactly. Now, the key with phone calls is to be prepared and polite. Have your notes in front of you, the invoice number, amount due, any relevant dates, so you're not fumbling around while the client is on the other end of the line.
You don't want to sound like you're digging through a pile of papers while they're waiting. What about the actual script? What do you say? Hey, just wondering where my money is.
Definitely not. They provide a sample script for a phone call as well, which emphasizes that same friendly but firm approach. It goes something like, "Hi, client's name. This is your name from your company. I'm calling regarding payment for project name. I wanted to check if you had a chance to review the invoice I sent on date, and if you have an update on when I can expect payment."
I see. So you're not accusing them of anything, just opening up a dialogue, seeking an update.
Exactly. It's about expressing that you're available to answer any questions they might have, and ultimately you're looking to find a solution that works for both parties.
Okay, so we've covered email and phone calls. But what about those times when you just need to send a quick reminder? Something a little less formal. Do they address that?
They do. They touch on using text messages or direct messages, especially if you already have that kind of established rapport with a client.
More informal, but still professional.
Right. Absolutely. A text message shouldn't be your first line of communication, especially for a new client or a large invoice. But for a quick check-in with someone you already have a good working relationship with, it can be very effective.
I imagine it's all about reading the room, so to speak.
Exactly. And just like with the other methods, they emphasize keeping those texts or direct messages brief, friendly, and to the point.
No novel-length texts.
Definitely not. Something like, "Hi, client's name. I hope you're having a great week. Just wanted to check in about the payment for project name. Do you have an update for me? Thanks."
Okay, so we have a solid game plan for sending those initial invoices and reminders, both formally and informally. But what happens when, despite your best efforts, those invoices are still going unpaid?
Well, that's where things can get a little trickier. But even then, this article emphasizes maintaining professionalism and approaching the situation strategically.
Because even if this particular invoice has turned into a bit of a saga, there's still a chance for future business, right? Or maybe there's a legitimate reason for the delay, and a bit of understanding can go a long way.
Exactly. And sometimes just knowing your options can help you feel more empowered to handle these situations. The article suggests considering a couple of different strategies. One option is to explore whether you can temporarily pause or limit access to whatever service or product you've provided.
So if you're a graphic designer who delivered a logo, maybe you politely inform the client that you'll be putting the final files on hold until the invoice is settled. Or if you're a coach offering a monthly package, you might temporarily suspend access to the client portal.
Precisely. It's a way of communicating that while you value them as a client and you're committed to delivering on your end, there are also boundaries in place to protect your business.
It's a gentle but firm way of saying, hey, I understand things happen, but to continue benefiting from this amazing thing you hired me for, we do need to take care of this outstanding balance.
I like that. It highlights that this isn't about punishment, it's about finding a solution that works for both sides. Now, they do acknowledge that there are times when, despite your best efforts, you might be dealing with a client who's consistently unresponsive or simply unwilling to pay.
The dreaded client from your nightmares scenario. Hopefully it never comes to that. But let's say we find ourselves in that unfortunate situation. What are our options then?
Well, they do mention the possibility of involving a third party. This could be a debt collection agency or, depending on the specifics of the situation and the amount involved, even seeking legal counsel.
Okay, so those are definitely last resorts, but it's good to know what those options are.
Absolutely. It's important to remember that you have rights as a business owner. You've delivered a service or product, and you're entitled to be compensated for your work.
Right. This isn't about being aggressive or confrontational. It's about advocating for yourself and the value you bring to the table.
Exactly. And if you do find yourself having to involve a third party, documentation is going to be your best friend.
Keep those records organized.
Absolutely. Having everything clearly documented, contracts, invoices, email correspondence, will make the process much smoother should you ever need to escalate things. Now, I know we've covered a lot of ground here, and some of it might feel a little intimidating, especially if you're just starting out. But the key takeaway here is that getting paid doesn't have to be a constant source of stress.
You're right. This article really emphasizes that by being proactive, setting clear expectations, and communicating effectively, you can create a payment process that respects both you and your clients.
Exactly. It's about shifting the mindset from dreading the payment conversation to this is just a normal part of doing business.
And when you have that system in place, it frees you up to focus on what you do best, creating amazing things and serving your clients. So as we wrap things up, here's a thought-provoking question for you to ponder. What's one action step, big or small, that you could take this week to make your payment process smoother? Is it finally implementing that online invoicing software you've been considering? Maybe it's adding a late fee clause to your contracts or simply drafting a template for those friendly reminder emails. Whatever it is, remember that you deserve to get paid on time, and setting yourself up for success in this area is a gift to both your business and your peace of mind.
Well said. And remember, it's a journey, not a race. Start with one small change and build from there.
You got this. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us. Until next time. Okay, we're back, and I don't know about you, but this part of the conversation always makes me a little bit, anxious. We've talked about those friendly reminders, those polite check-ins, but what happens when, despite your best efforts, those invoices are just, sitting in your client's inbox gathering virtual dust bunnies? What's the next move?
Take a deep breath, first of all. These situations can be stressful, but the article, it does offer some guidance for, navigating those trickier waters. And I think the overarching theme, even here, is about finding that balance, right? You want to assert your right to get paid, but you also want to preserve those client relationships as much as possible.
Because even if this particular invoice has turned into a bit of a saga, you don't necessarily want to burn that bridge completely. There might be a chance for future business down the line, or maybe there's a legitimate reason for the delay, and a bit of understanding can go a long way.
100%. And sometimes just knowing your options, it can help you feel more empowered to handle these situations. The article suggests a couple of different strategies you can consider. So one option is to explore if there's a way that you can temporarily pause or limit access to whatever it is that you've provided, the service or product.
So, for example, if you're a graphic designer and you've delivered a logo, maybe you politely inform the client that you'll be putting the final files, kind of on hold until the invoice is settled. Or if you're a coach offering a monthly package, you might temporarily suspend access to the client portal or something like that.
Exactly. It's a way of communicating, hey, I value you as a client and I'm committed to delivering on my end, but it also establishes that there are boundaries in place to protect your business, right?
Right. It's a gentle but firm way of saying, hey, I understand things happen, but to continue benefiting from this amazing thing that you hired me for, we do need to sort of take care of this outstanding balance.
I like that. It really highlights that it's not about, punishment or anything like that. It's about finding a solution that works for both sides. Now, they do acknowledge that there are times when, despite your absolute best efforts, you might just be dealing with a client who is consistently unresponsive or, frankly, just unwilling to pay.
The dreaded client from your nightmares scenario. Hopefully it never comes to that. But for the sake of this conversation, let's say we find ourselves in that unfortunate situation. What are our options then?
Well, they do mention the possibility of, and again, this would be kind of a last resort type of thing, but involving a third party. This could be a debt collection agency, or depending on, the specifics of the situation, the amount involved, maybe even seeking legal counsel.
Okay, so those are definitely more, serious steps for sure. But like you said, it's good to at least know what those options are if we ever need them.
Absolutely. And it's important to remember, you have rights as a business owner. You've delivered that service. You've delivered that product. You are entitled to be compensated for the work that you've done.
Right. It's not about being aggressive or confrontational. It's about advocating for yourself and for the value that you bring to the table.
Exactly. And if you do, for whatever reason, find yourself having to involve a third party, documentation is going to be, honestly, your best friend in those situations.
Keep those records organized, people.
Absolutely. Having everything clearly documented, contracts, invoices, email correspondence, it just makes the process that much smoother should you ever need to escalate things. Now, I know we've covered a lot of ground here, and I know some of it might feel, maybe a little intimidating, especially if you're just starting out and you're like, oh my gosh, I have to think about all this. But the key takeaway, the thing I really want listeners to walk away with, is that getting paid doesn't have to be this constant source of stress and anxiety.
You're so right. This article really drives home the point that by being proactive, setting those clear expectations up front, and just communicating effectively throughout the process, you can create a payment process that feels respectful to both you and to your clients.
Exactly. It's about shifting that mindset,
Yeah.
From dreading that payment conversation to just, okay, this is a normal part of doing business, and it doesn't have to be this big, scary thing.
And when you have that system in place, that's when you can breathe easy and really focus on what you do best, which is creating those amazing things, serving your clients. So as we wrap things up here, here's a thought-provoking question I want to leave you with today. What's one action step, big or small, that you can take this week to make your payment process just a little bit smoother? Is it finally implementing that online invoicing software you've been thinking about? Maybe it's adding a late fee clause to your contracts, or maybe it's as simple as sitting down and drafting a template for those friendly reminder emails. Whatever it is, remember, you deserve to get paid on time. Setting yourself up for success in this area is a gift to your business and to your peace of mind.
So well said. And remember, it's a journey, not a race. Start with one small change and build from there. You've got this.
You've got this. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us. Until next time.